I never thought this could happen to me, not to someone like me. I always thought we had something special, something that would never break, never falter. But the truth hit me so hard, it left me breathless. I found out he wasn't just cheating on me, he was leaving me, and he wasn't leaving me for just anyone. No, he was leaving me for her. My best friend. You think you know a person, right? You think you've seen every side of them, the good, the bad, even the ugly. But there's always something they hide. A secret, a lie. And it's usually the one thing that ends up destroying everything. Let me take you back to the moment when everything changed. It was supposed to be a normal day, just another day in our perfect little world. But when I walked into our living room, everything felt different. The air felt thicker, like it was holding something in, something I wasn't supposed to see, something I wasn't supposed to find out. The tension in that room was suffocating. There they were, my husband and my best friend, sitting way too close. I should have known something was off. I should have paid attention to the little things, the way he'd been distant lately, how she started coming over more often, but I didn't. I was too wrapped up in my own little bubble to notice what was going on behind my back. I couldn't even find the words to speak when I saw them together. It was like a punch to the stomach, a cold slap to my face. The betrayal hit me so hard I could barely breathe, and when he looked at me, that's when I knew. That's when I knew my whole life was about to shatter. His voice trailed off, and I could see the guilt in his eyes. But it wasn't enough. The damage had already been done. There were no apologies that could fix this. No words that could heal the wound he just carved into my heart. And then she opened her mouth. She had the nerve to speak. "I'm so sorry, but we didn't mean for this to happen." She was looking at me, but I couldn't even see her anymore. All I could see was the image of my husband, holding her hand, their fingers intertwined like they were the ones who were meant to be together all along. It's funny how the person who's supposed to be your best friend can betray you in the most cruel and heartless way possible. I trusted her. I told her my deepest secrets, my fears, and she repaid me by stealing the one thing I valued more than anything else. And him, well, he was just as bad, no, worse. He was supposed to be my rock, my protector, the one who would never hurt me. But there he was, betraying me in the worst way possible. There's a moment in life when you realize you've been living in a lie. Everything you thought you knew, every memory, every laugh, every kiss, it all turns to dust. And you have to start all over again. That was the moment. The moment when I realized the man I loved wasn't the person I thought he was. And my best friend, she wasn't who I thought she was either. But it didn't stop there. No, this wasn't just some random fling or a mistake. This was calculated, planned. I could see it in their eyes. They had been waiting for this moment, waiting for me to walk in and catch them so they could finally be together. The worst part? I knew she had always wanted him. I knew it deep down, even before everything came crashing down. She'd always had that look in her eyes whenever she looked at him, that special look. The one that says, "I want you, and I will do whatever it takes to get you." And I was too naive to see it, too blind to notice the signs. I couldn't even cry at first. I just stood there, paralyzed. I didn't know what to do. My mind was racing, my thoughts jumbled. How could he do this? How could she do this? Didn't they know what they had destroyed? But there's a moment when anger takes over, and that anger, it burns. It burns hotter than anything I've ever felt before. "I want you to leave." I barely recognized my own voice. It was cold, detached. I wasn't going to beg him to stay. I wasn't going to fall to my knees and plead for his love. I was done. I was done with both of them. He didn't even fight it. He just stood up, like he knew it was over. Like he had already made up his mind, and she just stared at me with those empty eyes like she had no remorse. Like she had no soul. "Please, just try to understand," she said, her voice soft, but I could hear the desperation. She was trying to justify it, trying to explain how they fell in love, how it wasn't planned, how it just happened. But I didn't want to hear it. I didn't care how it happened. All I cared about was the fact that the two people I trusted most in this world had stabbed me in the back. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just about the cheating. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was the abandonment. The way he turned his back on me, the way he just walked out without a second glance, the way she just stood there, like she had won some twisted game. But what hurt the most? What stung the deepest? It was the silence that followed. The weeks that passed without a word from him. No apology, no explanation, just nothing. I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart, to rebuild my life from the wreckage they had left behind, and it wasn't easy. It still isn't easy. Some days I feel like I'm drowning in the pain, but other days I feel stronger than I've ever felt before. I used to think I needed him, that I couldn't live without him, but now I see the truth. I don't need him. I don't need her. I only need myself. They both walked out of my life, but I'm still here. I'm still breathing, and I'm still fighting. It's funny how life has a way of stripping everything away from you, your husband, your best friend, your trust, and then forcing you to face yourself. But you know what? I'm not afraid. Not anymore. And maybe, just maybe, this was the wake-up call I needed, the lesson that taught me to never let anyone, not even the ones I love the most, define my worth, because I am worth so much more than this. I'm stronger than I ever knew. And if they think they've won, they're wrong. I'm just getting started. But you know what? It wasn't always this clear to me. I couldn't see it when I was deep in it, when I was still clinging to the idea of who I thought he was, who I thought she was. And I think that's the hardest part, realizing you didn't really know them at all. I remember when we first got together. It felt like a fairy tale, like everything was falling into place. He was charming, kind, everything I thought I needed in a partner. And she, my best friend, she was the person who had been there through every high and low. I thought we were inseparable, a trio. I never imagined a world without them in it, but somewhere along the way I lost sight of the truth. I was so consumed by the idea of love and friendship that I failed to see what was happening right in front of me. It's not like they made it obvious, at least not at first. They were careful, sneaky. I didn't see the signs, how could I? It was all too good to question. But trust me when I tell you, once the cracks began to show, they couldn't be ignored. The first red flag was subtle, just a feeling I had when I saw him and her talking a little too long, laughing a little too loudly, when she would touch him accidentally when handing him something. It was so innocent, right? I told myself it was nothing, but inside, something was telling me I was wrong, something was off, and I should have listened to it. But I didn't. I wanted to believe in the best in them, in us. I kept ignoring my gut, telling myself it was just jealousy. Maybe I was overthinking things. But let me tell you, there's a special kind of clarity that hits you when it all comes to light. When the truth slams into you with the force of a freight train. That day I walked in on them, I was devastated. But not just devastated, shattered. I thought about everything I had shared with them, every moment we spent together, all the times I thought I was living the life I deserved. It all felt like a lie. How could she do this to me? How could he do this to me? I remember thinking, how long has this been going on? I could never get the answer to that. Every time I asked, the silence that followed was deafening. All I got were weak explanations, half-hearted apologies. It just happened. We didn't mean for it to go this far. And the worst part? I believed them for a second. Maybe I wanted to believe them. I didn't want to accept that my reality was so broken. I didn't want to see the truth. Because the truth was unbearable. But here's the thing about truth. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't care about your comfort or your feelings. The truth is relentless. And eventually, it caught up with me. And when it did, I was forced to face the hardest reality of my life. They had both made a decision, and that decision didn't include me. I tried to bargain with them like some kind of desperate fool. Please, don't do this. I begged him. We can fix this. And he looked at me with those eyes. Those cold, empty eyes, and he simply nodded. He had already made up his mind. There was no saving us, no coming back from what he had already chosen. And my best friend, she didn't even offer me a shred of sympathy, no words of apology, just that same empty look. As though everything she had done was justified. Like there was no guilt, no shame in what they had done. I saw it now, their faces were mirrors, reflecting the same emptiness. They weren't the people I thought they were. When they walked out of my life that day, I had never felt more alone. The house felt like a tomb, the silence louder than any argument we had ever had. I didn't know what to do with myself. I couldn't cry because I was too numb. I couldn't scream because my throat had closed up in disbelief. But what I could do was move. I had to move. I had no choice. There was nothing else left to hold on to, nothing else to keep me in that place. The days that followed were the hardest I had ever known. There were moments where I couldn't even get out of bed, moments when I thought maybe I should just disappear. But something in me refused to give in to that darkness. Something in me rose, even when I thought I couldn't. I knew what I had to do. I had to let go. Not just of him, but of her. I had to let go of the idea that I could hold on to something that had already crumbled. There was no rebuilding this. There was no repairing a foundation that had already been shattered into a million pieces. So I did what any woman who's been betrayed should do. I started over. I started with myself. I spent days focusing on what made me happy. I cut off all contact with both of them. I blocked them from my life like the toxic entities they had become. No phone calls, no texts, no apologies, just silence. But here's the kicker. The silence wasn't just from them, it was from me too. I had to learn to live without needing their validation, without needing their love, and that was the hardest part of all. I poured myself into work, into my own healing. I started going to therapy, talking to people who understood the pain I was in, who could help me rebuild what had been torn apart. And slowly, I began to heal. Slowly, I started to remember who I was before them, before him and her. I began to trust again, but not the way I used to. I trusted myself. I trusted my ability to survive. I trusted that I didn't need anyone to define me, to complete me, to make me feel whole. I was whole on my own. And now I see the world differently. I don't look at relationships through rose-colored glasses anymore. I've learned that love doesn't hurt this way. Real love doesn't betray. Real love doesn't abandon. Real love doesn't turn you into a fool, into someone who has to question their worth every time they look in the mirror. No, real love builds you up. It makes you feel safe, supported, cherished. And if it doesn't, then it's not love. It's just a lie. But here's the most important lesson I've learned. I am the love of my life, and no one can ever take that away from me.